Preseason week 2 is over. What are some of the fantasy implications? We're talking about that in today's video. As always, give us a like and subscribe. We are over 500 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. Hopefully we will continue to grow. But again, I made one of these videos for last week, preseason week 1, and today we're talking about preseason week 2. It's good to never overreact to the preseason, especially when a player looks good. But usage is actually very important. How teams are using their players and the formations and first team and all that stuff, I think is important. So we're talking about that today and what it means for both fantasy, redraft, and dynasty. First up in the Eagles-Patriots game, the only really thing here is a little bit of concern for the top 2 receivers that are being drafted in redraft football. That's Demario Douglas and Jalen Polk. We've had 2 games in a row now where the Patriots are starting KJ Osborne and Tyquan Thornton. And Demario Douglas, who some people are a little bit high on, he is technically going undrafted in half PPR leagues, round 18. I think in PPR leagues, he's like just barely getting drafted or one of the first players not being drafted. But they're only using him in the slot. In 3 wide receiver sets, he's out there. However, in 2 wide receiver sets, at least their first team, they're using KJ Osborne and Tyquan Thornton. This team is already going to be a pretty low pass volume, not a very good offense potentially. And to have a player that is only playing on 3 wide receiver sets, that probably means it's going to be tough for Demario Douglas to be any type of fantasy relevant. I just don't think it's kind of noteworthy. I think this team's going to be in 2 wide receiver sets quite a lot. And it's just, it kind of, if you were excited about Demario Douglas at all, I think, you can temper expectations. He seems to be a clear-cut waiver wire guy, a guy that I wouldn't waste a draft spot on. Same thing with Jalen Polk. He's just not out there. He's behind KJ Osborne. Behind KJ Osborne as that Z receiver. It seems to be either Tyquan Thornton, Jalen Reagor, or Kendrick Bourne. They're going to be the X receiver. KJ Osborne's going to be the Z receiver. Jalen Polk's going to back up KJ Osborne. So just no one to get excited about at all for these Patriots in terms of their pass catchers. So just wanted to bring that up. In the Falcons-Ravens game, this is more of a dynasty thing. Devontae Walker is way down the depth chart. Yeah, way down the depth chart. Tylan Wallace, Malik Cunningham, Keith Kirkwood, they're all seemingly ahead of Devontae Walker, who didn't even play a snap until 6 minutes left of the second quarter, which basically put him at 7th on the depth chart. So for you dynasty players that were a little bit excited about Devontae Walker, I don't know, man. He's way down there in a receiving room that isn't very good. I mean, you're starting guys like Rashad Bateman and Nelson Aguilar, and you're 7th on the depth chart. I know Devontae Walker was a 4th-round pick, I believe, but it doesn't seem to be happening at least year 1 for him. Moving along to the Texans and the Giants game, we did get some interesting things here. I have Nico Collins here, as you see, round 3 wide receiver in half PPR. More about their usage and their wide receiver rotation. Nico Collins is going to be out there a lot. That's, I think, what they're showing in preseason is that Nico Collins, they played a lot of 11 personnel. So they had a lot of 3 wide receivers out there with Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell. However, when there were 2 wide receiver sets, it was Collins and Diggs, which we learned from week 1, right? And Nico Collins is going to be out there like 90% of the time or more. He played 15 of the 17 snaps with the starters. And last year, that wasn't the case. Last year, Nico Collins was like 75% of the snaps. In this case, he's closer to 90%, which is really good for his value. Stephon Diggs is going to be out there. Robert Woods came in. They used Xavier Hutchinson at times. Tank Dell, though, and I'm a big Tank Dell fan. You won't find anyone that's a bigger fan than me of Tank Dell. He ran he ran a route on 8 of their 13 pass plays. 8 of their 13 pass plays, which is, if you're doing the math there, that's like 65%, right? If I'm doing the math right, 60, it's between 60 and 65%. Generally, players are not fantasy relevant, not too fantasy relevant in terms of, especially where Tank Dell is being drafted. Tank Dell is being drafted in the 6th round. Players that are being drafted in the 6th round that are only running a route on 60 to 65% of their team's passing routes, it's tough to be fantasy relevant doing that. Now, that being said, Tank Dell is the type of receiver that can be, because he's that big play guy. He can with minimal targets, he can put up a big season. I mean, even last year, he had less than 50 catches last year. I know he missed time and stuff like that, but in his games, his 11 games, he was only getting about 6-7 targets a game. It's not like he was getting 10 targets a game. So Tank Dell can do it, and I think he's a great player, and I think he will be good. It just may be inconsistent, and you may be disappointed sometimes because he's, if he's not going to be out there 90% of the time, even 75% of the time, you could get some disappointing performances for sure. Just less opportunity, right? Fantasy football is, a lot of it's about opportunity. So on the other side of the field for the Giants, Devin Singletary absolutely dominated offensive snaps. They played for the entire first half. They're starters for the entire first half. And Devin Singletary was the clear guy, the absolute clear guy. Yeah, I think he played in all but 4 snaps in the first half. I forget how many snaps they had, but probably somewhere around 30 snaps or so at least. And he played in all but 4. Now, Tyrone Tracy didn't play, so that's something to kind of keep in mind here. But you would think that they would just kind of use Eric Gray in replace of Tyrone Tracy in terms of how they're going to run their offense, right? So even with Tyrone Tracy there, in the beginning of the season at the very least, Devin Singletary could be kind of a smash play here, 80% of the snaps or something like that. And, he's currently being drafted in round 8 as RB29. And you just look at some of the players going around him. It's a hurt Nick Chubb. It's a hurt Jonathan Brooks. It's a hurt Jalen Warren. It's a Zach Moss, who we're not really 100% sure what that split's going to be. It's guys like Brian Robinson. I think it's going to be 50-50. Tajay Spears. This is kind of the range he's going. And Devin Singletary, although they could be a bad offense, he could just get a huge workload. So just keep that in mind when your drafts come up. Moving on to the Bears and the Bears and Bengals game. I mentioned this last week with Gerald Everett and Cole Kmet, that they started Gerald Everett and then Cole Kmet in last week's game, and then Cole Kmet came in like a few snaps later. I think this tight end room's undraftable, in my opinion. I really do think it's undraftable for a couple reasons. Cole Kmet, who's a good player, young player, he's had some 70 catch games and stuff like that. You see his ADP there. He's already around 11 pick, tight end 16. He's already fallen. Why? Because you have a crowded receiving room in Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore, plus DeAndre Swift, right, who's a pass-catching running back, plus a rookie quarterback who we got to temper expectations, even though, Caleb Williams could be awesome. He's still a rookie quarterback. All those things combined is dropping Cole Kmet down. Now you throw into the fact that they're just using like a heavy rotation at the tight end position. And that's what Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator for Seattle, he was the offensive coordinator for Seattle last year. That's what he did. That's what he did in Seattle, his time in Seattle. It's just rotating. Everett played ahead of Kmet last week. And then they rotated Kmet in. And then this week it was Kmet on the first drive, but then Everett played on the second and most of the third drive. There's just this heavy rotation on a team where we're already a little bit concerned about, the target share in terms of a lot of mouths to feed. So this tight end room just seems absolutely undraftable in my opinion. I don't think I would waste a pick on Cole Kmet. I would look elsewhere if I'm looking for a starting or backup tight end. Nothing on the Bengals side, so we'll move on to the Browns and the Vikings. Just a quick one here. D'Onta Foreman, who isn't being drafted, but I think there's a good chance Nick Chubb starts the season on PUP, and which means he'll miss 4 weeks, I believe. It used to be 6, right? Now it's 4. I think there's a good chance that he starts the season on PUP, and that's going to bump up a guy like a D'Onta Foreman. Now, that being said, Pierre Strong was ahead of D'Onta Foreman, right? I think all three of them, Ford, Strong, and Foreman, are going to play with Chubb being out that first month. But, I was getting a little bit excited about Foreman, about him being a startable low-end flex piece for the month of September when Chubb was out. I don't know if that's going to be the case because Pierre Strong is ahead of him. Jerome Ford's going to get his. Pierre Strong is now seemingly going to get his. And then, Devontae Foreman may be the third on that depth chart. So just keep that in mind if you're planning on, using him in the beginning of September. For the Chiefs game, the Chiefs and the Lions game, Xavier Worthy, man, I brought him up last week. He looks awesome. And he's out there. That's the biggest thing. Like, I was a little bit worried about, this was, before the Marquise Brown injury, but even with the Marquise Brown injury, Xavier Worthy was out there. I know he got injured like first play, but it was Worthy, Rice, and Brown out there. So with the Marquise Brown injury, who's probably going to miss at least the first couple of weeks of the season, I think Xavier Worthy can hit the ground running here. And I was a little bit worried about beginning of the year, Andy Reid system, rookie wide receiver, things like that, and them trusting more of like the guys who have been on the team. This is a team who they can afford to bring on their rookies slowly. They're going for a three-peat. They're going to trust their rookies that know their – Xavier Worthy was out there 15 of the 18 snaps when Matt Mahomes was in the game. That's awesome, man. Like, if that's the case – and he looked good. If that's the case, like, Xavier Worthy, round 8, could be a steal, especially if Marquise Brown is going to miss 2-3 games. And, with that shoulder injury, could re-aggravate it. Nothing else on the Lions side besides the thing I mentioned last week with Craig Reynolds is going to be the RB3 for the Lions, so keep that in mind. In the Jets game, Jets-Panthers, last week I talked about Braylon Allen, I believe, and I said it seems like Braylon Allen is the clear-cut RB2. That's a little bit more of a question now. It's a little bit less secure. Isaiah Davis, who was also a rookie drafted in the 5th round, they drafted Braylon Allen in the 4th and then Isaiah Davis in the 5th. Isaiah Davis was being worked in a little bit more, and I mentioned this shortly after the draft for dynasty players. And I said, look, we assume Braylon Allen's going to be the RB2, and most people are going to draft Braylon Allen and target him because, one, he's a name that we know, right? Coming into the college year, he was one of the, top running backs for this draft class. He fell a little bit because he disappointed. But everyone's going to be targeting Braylon Allen, one, because we know his name, and two, because he was drafted before Isaiah Davis. Isaiah Davis has a decent chance at being the backup running back himself. I like Isaiah Davis. I think he can be a workhorse running back if he gets the opportunity. He played there at South Dakota State, so a lot of people just don't know his name. But, like, the guy has a good build. He's 6 foot 220, not as big as Braylon Allen, but he has a good running back build and things like that. So they were using him a little bit more. Allen, how it appeared last week was it was clear it was Breece Hall. Yeah. And then how it started this year is that Davis started the game and Allen also came in and took snaps on the first drive. Then Davis took all the second drive. Allen took the third, and then Allen played most of the fourth drive with Davis mixing in. So it was literally Davis most of the first drive with Allen mixing in, Davis all of the second, Allen all of the third, Allen most of the third with Davis working in, right? So that kind of shows me that it's still potentially up in the air. So just keep that in mind. It might not be as clear-cut as a handcuff situation here. Moving along, just double-checking if there was anything in this other game here. No. Moving along to the Colts and Cardinals. Again, I'll bring it up. Trey Benson. I don't think he's as good as a handcuff as we're making it out to be. One, I thought maybe he'd be like a handcuff with benefits is what I call him, right? That handcuff who, yeah, they're a handcuff, but they can also slightly think of Tony Pollard, not his big year with Ezekiel Elliott, the year before where he was like a top 20 running back, but he was like still usable, but he was also a handcuff. I thought Trey Benson would possibly be something like that with him maybe getting passing down work and being mixed in. Doesn't seem to be the case. Trey Benson's playing, James Conner's resting during the preseason. Trey Benson's playing first and second down, and then they bring in Amari DiMercado, the third down. So what that means to me is it's James Conner and DiMercado during the season, with Benson not really doing much unless Conner gets hurt, which means I think this round 10 pick here and it's an early round 10 pick, by the way. I think is a little bit too rich for my blood. I think it's a little bit too rich for my blood for Trey Benson. If he falls like around, I'm in on it. But you're still round 10. You still got guys like Ezekiel Elliott, Gus Edwards, Chase Brown, who could be like a handcuff with benefits, Jerome Ford, guys like that, like guys that you could potentially start during bye weeks. I don't think Trey Benson's going to be that guy. So, and even if James Conner goes down, he's going to be the running back on the first and second down. He's not going to be this full-on workhorse guy. So keep that in mind there. Nothing else, I believe, from this game. So in the Titans game, Titans Seahawks, there really wasn't anything. Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard rested. That seems to be a 50-50 split. There wasn't really anything on the Seahawks side. The only thing I'll bring up is Julius Chestnut, who's a running back for the Titans, in case you didn't know. He seems to be the RB3. I had to really scrape the bottom of the barrel to find something here. So we'll just move on here. Dolphins and Commanders. I'm getting more and more excited about Jahan Dotson because Jahan Dotson is all the way down at round 13. He's a former first-round pick just a couple years ago who flashed in his rookie year, right? He kind of had like a Jaden Reed-like rookie year where Jahan Dotson, his rookie year, had 500 yards, but he had 7 touchdowns, and he did that in 12 games. And people were getting excited about him. And then he absolutely disappointed last year. Just him and Sam Howell were on the same page or whatever. Now how they're using him is what I'm getting excited about. He is being used as an outside receiver in 2 wide receiver sets. And then they're moving him to the slot in 3 wide receiver sets. And that's going to be gold for usually that's gold for fantasy. What we want from our stud receivers, you play on the outside you play in 2 wide receiver sets, obviously, and then you're in the slot in 3 wide receiver sets because the slot targets are so much easier than outside targets. And that's what they're doing with Jahan Dotson. I'm getting super excited. If Jaden Daniels is going to have a good rookie year, Jahan Dotson could be awesome and a huge value this year. So I'm going to be having a lot of Jahan Dotson on my team for sure. Also, a quick note, Cliff Kingsbury offenses love slot players. Love slot players. Absolutely. So they have one of the most over Cliff Kingsbury's like 3 years or whatever it was in Arizona. They had like top 5 most targets to their slot players. So I'm loving Jahan Dotson this year. Absolutely. Think it's a round 13 pick. Like these guys are all, dart throw guys. Steelers game, Buffalo and Steelers. Only note I have here is on the Steelers. Khalil Shakir, who after week 1 was looking like, holy crap, Shakir's going to be the main guy. He was out there all the time. The biggest thing that I was slightly worried about was Mac Hollins. Now, I know a lot of you are probably laughing at that and being like, Mac Hollins, really? And Mac Hollins is not going to be fantasy relevant. But Mac Hollins is a professional receiver that can play the X position on the outside because he's a bigger guy who can block, stretch the field, do the dirty work that the X receivers need, right? A lot of times teams need that receiver on the outside to do things that outside receivers have to do in order for the entire offense to function. And Mac Hollins and MVS were kind of a threat. I know where this receiver room was already a mess. Is it Shakir? Is it Curtis Samuel? Is it Keon Coleman? Is it Dalton Kincaid? And then throw in the mix here, MVS and Mac Hollins, who are professional receivers who can play on the outside. Now, MVS got hurt, but Khalil Shakir this game, although he looked awesome in the first preseason game, like in terms of his usage, was only playing in 3 wide receiver sets with Mac Hollins replacing Shakir. It was Mac Hollins and Coleman were the 2 main outside receivers, and then Shakir only in on 3 wide receiver sets. And Curtis Samuel didn't play this game. Yeah. And that means Shakir should have played more. So I'm concerned about Shakir now. Again, it's a round 11 pick. If it stays here, okay, I can live with it. But just keep that in mind. Like, we could be very disappointed. Like, if you're expecting big things from Shakir because he's the only receiver on this team that's caught a pass from Josh Allen, I just don't know if it's going to happen. I really don't. Moving right along, we have the Chargers. In the Chargers-Rams game here, Lad McConkey. He's another one where, man, so first of all, they started Brendan Rice, the 7th-round rookie, Jerry Rice's son. They started him. They had all the receivers ready for this game. On the first drive, it was Palmer and Rice on the outside and McConkey in the slot. Darius Davis got mixed in. DJ Shark got mixed in. Palmer stopped playing. I think Palmer's the top guy. I think it's pretty clear that he's the top guy. McConkey continued to play. But he's only being used on 3 wide receiver sets. He has no snaps in 12 personnel, which is a running back and 2 tight ends. The Chargers are going to use a lot of 12 personnel. Trust me. They're going to be a running team, and they're going to run they're going to pass out of their run look formations. They're going to have a lot of two tight end sets. This makes me a little bit worried about McConkey and his upside only being played in 3 wide receiver sets. Could it change? Of course. Is it going to? I don't know. And he's a round 9 pick, guys. Like this is for some of you, this is still a starter if you play in a little bit deeper leagues. For a lot of you, this is like first bench guy. And I just don't know how consistent he's going to be. We have guys like Christian Watson, Jordan Addison, JSN, going around Ladd McConkey, who I think can all have better opportunity if they're not going to use McConkey on the outside. So again, just keep that stuff in mind here. Also, can't go a video without shouting out my boy Jordan Whittington. Made a video back on him back in early May about stashing him. He looked awesome again. I hope they don't play him in preseason week 3 because that means Rams don't play their starters. The guys that are their starters or clear backups, right? Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Tutu Atwell, Demarcus Robinson, all didn't play. Those are the top 4 guys. They played Jordan Whittington. Last year, after preseason week 1, they played Puka. He looked awesome. And then they benched him preseason week 2. I hope they bench Jordan Whittington week 3 because that means they really like him. Tank Bigsby for the next game, the Jags and the Buccaneers. Tank Bigsby is the clear backup to ETN. So just keep that in mind if you do have ETN or whatnot, whether you like Bigsby or not. It is Bigsby. Bigsby's the clear backup. They want to make it work. So another guy that seems to be the clear backup in the same game is Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving is going to be the RB2 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So those 2 guys, Bigsby and Bucky, are the backups. Keep that in mind if something happens to ETN or Rachaad White. In the Raiders-Cowboys game, Zamir White had some strange usage. It's a little bit of concern, right? White, one thing is he's playing deeper into the preseason than you would expect for a guy that's supposed to be the starter, right? Alexander Madison was mixing in on passing downs. The Raiders did a similar, that was in the first preseason game. It was like Madison, White was taking the early down. Madison took some of the second drive, and then White played in the third drive. In the red zone, it was Zamir White. They're still using guys like Amir Abdullah and Dylan Lobb as the pass catchers. It's just a weird rotation where, White's playing longer than like a guy like Madison. And you would think for their clear-cut starter, they would say, no, we know who you are. It just makes me a little bit concerned about investing a 6th-round pick into Zamir White because it could be another last year's Alexander Madison situation. 6th-round pick, we still have guys like DeAndre Swift, Najee Harris, Raheem Mostert, Tony Pollard going around Zamir White. I might lean those guys now just because I'm not really sure what the Raiders' plans are. And I might just take a little bit more clear-cut situation here. The Broncos-Packers game. Bo Nix looks good, by the way. A little bit weird. We are still very unclear about this running back rotation for the Broncos. Right? In preseason week 1, it was very similar to what they did last year. It was Javonte in on rundowns, Samaje Perine on third downs. Jaleel McLaughlin was coming in and taking, some carries from Javonte. That's kind of what they did last year. This week, it was Williams who started, and then McLaughlin was rotating in after a few plays. And then they continued this rotation on their first couple of drives, right? And McLaughlin was being used on like third down and at the goal line. And then, so McLaughlin actually ended up playing more snaps, right? So I really don't know what's going on. Perine played on a 1st and 10. Estime was rotating in. Like, what is the rotation here? I have no idea. Now, I still think Javonte is still an okay value at round 8, but I still don't know what the hell this rotation is. Is it Javonte and Jaleel? Is it Javonte Perine and Jaleel? Like, what is it? I don't know, man. Hopefully we get a little bit clearer picture, but before we draft, but just keep that in mind if Javonte's on the clock there. And then the last thing here is with the Saints game, Saints 49ers. Taysom Hill, if you could start him as a tight end, which in Sleeper, I believe you can. In CBS, I don't think you can. I don't know about ESPN. MFL, I don't think you can either, but maybe you can with your league settings. If you could start Taysom Hill as a tight end, please pick him up. The dude's going to be good this year, I'm telling you. As much as we hate it, he played 14 of 22 snaps. He played 6 at tight end, 4 at halfback, 4 at fullback, 1 in the slot, right? He's all over the place. He's going to be used in the red zone, right? He's going to get 600 to 700, at least 700 total yards with half rushing, half receiving, maybe 30 catches. He's going to have touchdown opportunity. He can throw a touchdown pass. Like, the dude is like the perfect tight end who you could take at the end of your draft. He's not even being drafted. Most people play in 16-round drafts. He's not even being drafted in a 16-round draft. Like, the dude could be awesome. So just keep that in mind. That's all I have for you guys. Well, it'll be interesting to see week 3 what teams do. Football's here, man. We're just a few weeks away. Appreciate you all. Like and subscribe to the channel. See you all in the next